Thank you, Rochelle. Good afternoon, everybody. After that wonderful lunch, I hope I don't bore you to sleep. In your program, you will see that the presentation from the city was supposed to be Mayor Dwight C. Jones. As you can see, I am not Mayor Dwight C. Jones. Although I am a surrogate for him often, and sometimes they make me even wear his name tag. So thank you for giving me my own name tag. I appreciate that. My name is Deborah Garner, and I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Richmond. And what that means is for Human Services. And within my portfolio are the Richmond Health Department, Richmond Behavioral Health, the Department of Social Services, the Department of Justice Services, and then I have a few interesting ones. I have the libraries for the City of Richmond, as well as Parks and Recs. So I have a very diverse portfolio, but my area of interest is certainly human services and areas related to the health and well-being of all the citizens of Richmond. You might say, why would a mayor be involved with the breastfeeding commission? I know a lot of people, when they see that, they go, okay, that's interesting. Well, I've had some conversations during lunch about that. When our mayor came in 2010, his main focus was to provide and to promote the health and well-being of the citizens of Richmond. Economic development was important, but he wanted to make sure that even when we did economic development, that we included the health and well-being of the city's citizens of Richmond. So we, in addition to the breastfeeding commission, we have undertaken in the city a lot of other human-related issues, because not only was our mayor a legislator prior to becoming the mayor, he is and has been for a long time a pastor of a large church. So with that, his background is improving the human condition of all citizens. And those of you who may be familiar with Richmond may or may not know that we're kind of a small town. People call it a city, but it's actually a big town. But we have 26% poverty in the city of Richmond. So one of our goals, and one of the mayor's goals, is to try to create programming and try to create economic development that would change the culture in Richmond, because Richmond is a tale of two cities. On one side, there's this thriving, wonderful, resurgent city with new buildings. Dominion Power is getting ready to build 230-story twin towers in the middle of downtown Richmond. We have several Fortune 500, 300 companies in Richmond, but just south of the river, we have poverty, and we have it all that is kind of clustered together. So his goal has been to try to work on programs, work on economic development that would mitigate some of this poverty, and also to, as I said before, try to help improve the human condition for all Richmonders. So I will talk a little about, and I'm not really good with technology, so is it the red button? Do I push the red button?
No, the white button.
Yes.
That button.
To advance.
The clicker. There we go. Forging partnerships in breastfeeding in RVA. And while I'm here to talk about this, we have some of the birthers of this program sitting in the audience. And when we have the question and answer, I will certainly defer to Ms. Rose Singleton, who is over our Healthy Starts initiative, who was one of the founding members of the commission. And then our other partners with the Healthy Hearts Plus 2 are here as well. So I want to certainly recognize them for the work that they've done on this project. So, forging partnerships for breastfeeding in RVA. In July of 2011, Mayor Dwight C. Jones officially created the Mayor's Breastfeeding Commission. And this commission was actually housed in the Department of Human Services through the Department of Social Services and the Healthy Start Initiative, which Ms. Singleton is the director of. Richmond City became the first locality in Virginia to establish a breastfeeding commission, and the first to bring together businesses, government, healthcare, and community advocates to address this problem. One of the first ways we got this started, and we feel like it's really important that you get the message out that you're going to do this. You build it and they will come. So we started out with a press conference and a kickoff. And, uh-oh, I think I passed by where I am here. Anyway, the mayor sent out invitations to all the commission members, invited the, that's not on the slide here, invited the senior level management of the 3 competing hospitals in the city of Richmond, which is Bon Secure, the HCA, and VCU. And it's very, very hard, very, very hard. There we go. It's very, very hard to get competing hospitals together. Very, very hard. I'm sure you all know that. And in the city of Richmond, everybody's competing for the business. So one of the reasons that this worked so well is because the city became the neutral party. Nobody got any more attention than any other person, VP, who came from the hospitals. Everybody was on a level playing field. We also involved the senior level management of the Chamber of Commerce. And the person involved with that was the Senior VP of Government and Community Affairs. And that's a pretty big deal as well, because we felt like businesses were really important to bring to the table. We brought the Virginia Health Commissioner there. While the local Richmond City Health District has a relationship with the city of Richmond, they have dual reporting to the state as well as to the city. So we brought the city health commissioner there. And then we brought in local breastfeeding mothers, and we wanted to showcase the city's lactation room. We also included the community because we felt like it was really important to have diversity on the commission. So we brought in health professionals, we brought in doctors, nurses, lactation consultants, doulas, health educators, local and state health department, and the 3 local hospitals had members, not just their CAOs, but other members of their team on board. The commission organizations included the business community, as I mentioned earlier, and it was the Greater Richmond Chamber of Commerce, Capital One, insurance companies, the local McDonald's franchise, and the Retail Merchants Association. Because anything that happens in Richmond, I don't know if you know the city, but it's landlocked. Richmond is like in the middle of the capital square is right around there, but we have localities, and because they're independent, we can annex. So we depend on businesses to help us do most of the things we do, and we have a good relationship with those businesses. As I said before, we have a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 300 companies within the city, and we've learned in all of our other dealings, if you don't bring the businesses to the table, you don't get much done. So the mayor was able to get all of these people at the table. And of course, we involved government. DMAS, the Department of Medical Assistance Services, which included the Virginia Medicaid Office, and of course the City of Richmond, not just the mayor, he actually attended the commission meetings, but he had senior staff involved as well. The former DCL for Human Services, the director of the Department of Social Services, the Richmond Health District Commissioner, and other city leaders were involved. And then, of course, we had the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, and these are our public housing people. We brought them to the table as well because a lot of the underserved populations are located within these public housing units. Others included on the commission were community advocates, lay health educators, the faith community, WIC peer counselors, breastfeeding mothers and fathers, because we have a very strong fatherhood initiative through our Richmond Health District, nonprofit and for-profit groups, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. We included everybody, and Rose laughed because that's her saying. We wanted to make sure we had everybody at the table. The framework for this, what we decided to do, and the staff decided that we would use the CDC's guide to breastfeeding interventions as our model. The Richmond Healthy Start Initiative, a program designed to eliminate disparities in perinatal health. I'm sorry, I might want to put these glasses on. Was also involved, and that is, Rose is actually the project director for that. Healthy Starts Plus, which are our nonprofit partners who are also within the audience and is here to answer any questions about their involvement. They were there to work on the ABCs of breastfeeding, to help the mothers to appreciate themselves, to bond with their babies, and to give caregivers, to make the mothers caregivers for themselves and for their babies. So how did we get everybody on the same page with such a diverse group? Well, we knew that the knowledge and the expertise would be different. So what we decided to do was create a resource notebook. And I actually have that big notebook that I kind of pull out and read when people are asking us about that. And in that notebook, we put the CDC guide for the breastfeeding interventions. And as you all know, that there are 6 interventions. We use 4 of those interventions, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Included in the notebook was also the 2011 Surgeon General's call to action to support breastfeeding, the African American women and breastfeeding, the fathers supporting breastfeeding, and the HRSA's business case for breastfeeding. We included all of that in a big notebook for all of our participants within the commission. Then we scheduled, and this was scheduled at the very beginning so everybody would know they could set it on their schedule. We scheduled monthly meetings, and these meetings went for 6 consecutive months where the commission would meet to discuss issues and get the program going. And we talked about some of the things that were important at these meetings, and the things we talked about were baby-friendly hospital initiatives. And as Rochelle just told you, that VCU just got their designation this year, as a matter of fact, and someone from our office was actually interviewed as one of their people to verify that they were doing the things to make them baby-friendly. We talked about business case for breastfeeding and how we were going to make that to the community. We talked about WIC services. We talked about the ABCs of breastfeeding and the local programs that were available. We talked about the healthcare providers. We talked about the doulas and what their role were. And then we talked about how we were going to develop a media and marketing strategy for this. And one of the things that the committees that were created were the baby-friendly, which would include the hospitals, and then we created a committee that would talk about the business cases, and that would include the businesses and the government agencies that were represented. We had a committee on educators and programs, and that included the doulas, the health educators, the breastfeeding moms, and all those people that were related to community programs. We then had a committee related to healthcare providers, and on that were the physicians, the nurses, and the hospital administrators and workers. And then we developed a media and social marketing committee, and on that included some of the business leaders, but also the people within the city who were responsible for the press secretary and those kind of people who were responsible for getting the message out. Okay, and after we had these meetings and hosted these forums, we decided to take this to the street. And what we did when we took it to the street was we hosted 5 public forums. And if you have questions about those later, I know Rose could talk to you some in detail about how those forums were developed and how they were orchestrated. We reviewed the recommendations from each of the committees, and then we allowed the residents to provide input. When you pull all these committee people together, when you have the forums and you have community input, you realize maybe you forgot something, or maybe we didn't touch on things that the community thought was more important. So that was the purpose of including the public forums. And I don't know if any of you have ever worked in local government before, but you can't even sharpen a pencil without public input. So it's really important that you have public input in everything that you do. And then we ranked and prioritized the recommendations through these forums. And then it was time for the commission to make the recommendations to the mayor. And on July 2013, the presentation was made to the mayor. And as Rose was saying at lunch, the stars were aligned and everybody was in town, because not only did we have local people involved, we also had as our co-chair, Ms. Stephanie Ferguson, who is works with the World Health Organization. So getting her back in town and getting her actually in the country was kind of a difficult thing. She's actually an old friend of mine, so I know how that goes. And so once that happened, they were able to sit down and get everybody, the hospital, the chamber, the media coverage, to make the presentation to the mayor. And at that point, the mayor accepted the presentation. And again, if you've ever worked in government, you know that anything like this, if you do a task force or if you do a commission, if you don't have results and you don't do anything about it, you get beat up over the head for the next election. So you got to let the people know. The mayor has to do this big press thing to accept it, and then we got to say, here's what we're going to do to do that. And so as the slide said, the stars were aligned, and we were able to make the presentation to the mayor. And it became a big deal. It got a lot of media coverage. It got a lot of community support because of all the people that were at the table. And again, bringing 3 competing hospitals to the table is a really big feat. So the commission's work spawned several successful initiatives aimed at increasing breastfeeding, and they included leading the mayor's breastfeeding initiative under the Richmond Healthy Start. And at that point, there was no place for this, so it actually got housed within a department within the Department of Social Services, which was the Healthy Start initiative. So it found a home. And that's the one way to get things to be sustainable, is to help it find a home. And then funding from the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth to establish a Healthy Communities Action Team. And this team was to work on youth obesity and breastfeeding. So this was a result of the work that was done by the commission. And then funding from the National Association of Counties and City Health Officials, which allowed us to implement the ABCs of breastfeeding model and to partner with the Healthy Hearts Plus 2 to be able to do that through grant funding. An academic community engagement partnership with Virginia Commonwealth University, and that's one of many, many partnerships that we have with the university, as we are surrounded by each other. So out of this came that community engagement partnership. And they studied the barriers and facilitators to infant feeding among low-income African American women. The study was done as a result of this partnership. And through the focus groups and the surveys of the WIC participants, we were able to identify some of the needs of the WIC participants and to be able to help get better services provided to them. Another result of this was the big latch on, and I don't know, Rose, if it's every year, but every year at the state capitol, they have this big event where breastfeeding mothers come, and it's called the Big Latch On, and they get a lot of media attention, and it's just a day of breastfeeding at the capitol. So very, very interesting. It's happened in 2012, 13, and 14 for these campaigns. And actually, when I first came into the city last year, I think they were having the big one at the Capitol. And I think it rained that day, but fortunately, they still carried on. Again, we were able to get the 3 hospitals to continue to work and to co-sponsor some of the events that were going on around the breastfeeding. Okay, progress, another result was progress by all hospital systems toward the evidence-based practices. And in everything we do now in the city, we're trying to make sure that we have explored the body of work out there and that what we're trying to promote is evidence-based. So we've tried to get, and as you can see from what VCU and Rochelle said, that VCU is certainly on board with getting all their practices in line, and as a result, they've become baby friendly have that designation. So we're still working with the other 2 hospital systems toward doing some of those same kind of things. And as a result, we have 2 lactation rooms in city government. And I was speaking with one of my peers at lunch when I was telling people, I know the mayor has kind of, in our weekly briefings, you know, we talk about events, and we've been talking about the breastfeeding. And the first time we brought that up, you know, most of my colleagues are males, and so they go, ew. And so for the past 2 weeks, every briefing I've made sure that I brought up, I'm attending the breastfeeding conference as a surrogate for the mayor. So, yeah, so we're trying to work with some of our city people to kind of get them more adapt to the notion of that. And so we do have 2 lactation rooms in the city, and I will actually show you pictures of those. They're very nice spaces. Yes. So we're trying to not only get the message out, but we're trying to sensitize, or I guess desensitize, our employees and other businesses with the notion of how important this issue is within the city and in our whole state as well. So one of the things that we are still trying to do is create an inclusive atmosphere to kind of keep and sustain what we've got going on. And one of the ways we've been able to do that is to have the mayor be the key advocate. So every year, I know we did it last year, and we will do it as this is his last term and he's not eligible to serve again in the State of the Union. When we talk about things and initiatives that the city has done, we certainly highlight this as one of the big important things that we have done within the city. So having the mayor as an advocate is certainly helping to shine the light on some of those things. We also try to serve as the neutral organization between the competing hospitals to kind of keep them at the table. And they're willing to come when one person doesn't get any more attention than the other. So that's why through our Healthy Start initiative, we lead the activities, we lead the follow-up conferences, so everybody will come to the table. So we try to be the neutral person and level the playing field for that. We try to make all the members welcome, and we let people know that the city values their partnerships, and we let them know that we value their experience and their knowledge, and that everybody has an equal say in the relationship that we have. While all this sounds good, there's still a lot of work that we need to do. We need to continue to engage our high levels of leadership. We need to continue to work with the multi and diverse sectors within our community and try to have a more collaborative spirit. While we work well together, we need to continue to build those relationships, because those were the ingredients that help us have the early success that we have. So to sustain that, we have to continue to work on that. While we had the right idea, we're not done yet. Stay tuned. Thank you.